Hello Milena, in this short screencast I'm going to give you feedback to last week's summary. Okay, first of all, do you remember we said instead of uploading a Word file, can you just work directly on Google Classroom using a Google Doc? That's much easier for me. So let's try and do that in the future. Okay, now let's see about your summary. In the video, we all have biases. The show argues that all our actions involve bias. Okay, fine. So title, name of speaker, argues that good use of reporting verb. All our actions involve the bias. It's part of his main idea, that's true. Maybe you can expand it a little bit and you can add the idea of we need to do something about that. Remember, he gives recommendations at the end. No, actually not at the end. It's just at least half of the video is about the recommendations he gives. So we all have biases, but there are things we can do about them. There are necessary steps or steps we can take to solve the problem, something like that, right? You want to include that because your first sentence should try and capture the whole video. The main idea, which is half of it, is we have biases, we're very influenced by them, we don't even realize that, but there are things we can do or should do, right? But other than that, your first sentence is good. It's focused, it's clear, and you try to make it argumentative, which is good. The reason for this is that biases are hidden and have three main characteristics. Okay. First, now I notice here you mention the speaker once and then at the end you mention him again. I think in between you could also, here in between you could use the speaker or Hockett, and you can use reporting verbs, maintains, claims, explains, use that a little bit more. First, biases are subconscious, meaning we do not know that we have them to change it. Yes, we are not aware of them. Okay, we do not know that we have them. I'm not sure about this phrase. First of all, them and then it. See, who is it referring to here? You mean the biases? So maybe you can say that a little bit more academically. We do not know that we have them. We can say that they're unconscious, which meaning that we're not always aware of our biases, and hence, and that makes it difficult for us to change them, something like that, right? Or change our behavior or something, change our attitude. So make it a bit more academic, and here the them and the it, right? They probably refer to the same thing, but one is singular, the other is plural. So we can tidy this up, meaning we do not know that we have them. Make it a little bit more academic. Okay. But it's a good supporting idea. He does start with that. Biases are subconscious. Second, good use of linking words here. First, second, third, that makes it very clear. The bias associated with the predictability, that is, we certainly expect any result. I'm not sure what this is saying actually. It's a little bit unclear. First of all, here you're missing a verb. Biases are associated with the predictability. That is, we certainly expect any result. This is actually rather unclear. What did he say was the second characteristic? Remember? He was saying that first one was that they're subconscious, and the second one is they often run counter to our own stated beliefs. So we think we practice inclusion. We think we are all about diversity, but really our implicit biases mean that we actually act in a way that's different from that, from our own stated beliefs, right? here this is just rather vague. We certainly expect any result. So I would say go back to the lecture and try, and in your own words, try to summarize that second characteristic, because this, I'm just not sure what this is here. Third, we need bias to reduce our feelings of shame. We need bias to reduce, I'm not sure what that means. We do not need bias, do we? We need to get rid of bias. We need bias to reduce our feelings of shame, which is much easier than admitting guilt. Yeah, again, this is a little bit unclear. And by the way, this third was, remember, he actually offers two lists of three. The first list of three is the three characteristics. And then he gives another list of three recommendations. So this third is actually from that second list. It's actually a recommendation. It's not a characteristic. So I would suggest go back to the video and make very good detailed notes about, because these are really the three things. After the first sentence, you could mention the three characteristics and then the three recommendations, and then write a conclusion. That really is your summary. Structure should be very simple and very clear. But this third, you should mention it, but much later on. First, we need to discuss the three characteristics and what were they. So they are subconscious, they run counter to our stated beliefs, and I think the third one was, he was talking about how quick they are. He was saying they're automatic, so maybe here you want to just spend a bit of a sentence or two expanding on this. Third characteristic was about how they're automatic, how automatic and quick they are, something like that, right? Automatic and fast, these fast associations, okay? Then, after you've described or discussed the three characteristics, you want to include a cohesive device, right? Like a linking phrase, and then move on to talk about the recommendations he gives. Again, you can use the name. Furthermore, or additionally, or having discussed these characteristics, the characteristics of biases, Hockett goes on to offer recommendations about how we can solve the problem, something like that. And then you go first, second, third. And this third, you're right, he does offer that as a recommendation. But that should come after you've discussed the first two, right? So you definitely need to expand here. Okay. So the three recommendations he gives. You should include those. Third, we need bias to reduce our feelings of shame. Here, I'm not sure what this is saying. He does talk about openly discussing our biases. So he does mention reducing our shame. So basically, be open, discuss your biases without shame. If you want to fix the problem, you need to first be open and discuss those without any feelings of shame. So that's a good idea as a supporting idea. You just want to rephrase that a little bit, because it sounds like we actually need biases, right? So rephrase this, which is much easier than admitting guilt. I'm just not sure what this is, what the idea here is. It's a little bit unclear. In addition, these characteristics, and now we go back to the characteristics. Remember, we should have discussed them here, right? So it's a little bit of a mess. You have a very good first sentence, and from what I can see, the last sentence is also quite good, but in between, this really is a bit of a jumble. So you need to fix that. And I would say, first plan how you're going to write this paragraph, right? Make a sketch, like a scaffold. I'm going to start with the main idea, then I'll write about the 3 characteristics, then I'll mention the 3 recommendations, and then conclusion, right? This should be much easier to write a paragraph if you follow that structure instead of simply piling up one sentence after another ideas from the lecture. Okay, so these characteristics do not motivate people, do not come to self-change. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. You mean because they are hidden and we don't realize this, it's hard to change our behavior precisely because we're not aware of it. Yeah, something like that. Maybe you're trying to say. So you can rephrase this to make it clearer. But again, you would say that after you've discussed these biases, the characteristics, not after you've discussed shame, which is a recommendation, right? So the main issue for implicit bias is how we align our actions and behaviors with our conscious beliefs, while we do not consider. Okay, this sounds very good here. While we do not consider biases, okay, that no less influence our behavior. Here I'm not very sure what's going on. So the main issue for implicit bias is how we align our actions and behaviors with our conscious beliefs. That sounds good. While we do not, do you mean to say while we do not consider, you mean while we do not act on our biases? I'm not sure what this means, while we do not consider biases that no less influence. I kind of get the idea here. I think you're trying to say that we need to align our behavior with our stated beliefs and not be influenced. Maybe that's what you want to say here. And not be influenced by our biases. Something like that. Instead of being influenced by our biases, we need to align our behaviors with our stated beliefs. Something like that. See, that would make it a bit clearer. I think that's what you're trying to say with this, while we do not consider. Now, by the way, I applaud the fact that you're trying to use your own words. I remember last semester you had a bit of a problem with plagiarism, and I think that's what you're trying to do in this paragraph. You're trying to avoid plagiarism. So you're using your own words, which is good, but you do want to be more clear. Okay? In conclusion, Hockett claims that we need to do internal work with ourselves to change, so that external work with other people becomes possible. Yes, he does end with that. I would rephrase it a little bit, because you don't need to necessarily repeat his own phrasing, internal work and external work. You could just say we need to start with ourselves first. We need to work on our own biases if we want to produce positive change in the world. Something like that. Okay. So you can rephrase this a little bit. But it is a good concluding sentence, generally speaking. I mean, it is the conclusion of the whole video, so that's good. So yeah, work on phrasing. Again, I encourage you to use your own words, but this is important in order to avoid plagiarism, but just make it more clear. And just start with a simple structure. First, second, third characteristics. First, second, third recommendations. And then work from that. Okay? I hope this is helpful. Good luck.